There's a conversation we keep having way too late. We talk about healing women, we talk about recovery, we talk about trauma, restoration, and resilience. And yes, all of that matters, but almost no one is willing to sit with the question that comes before the healing conversation. Why did so many women need healing in the first place? Not as a slogan, not as a social media caption, but as a responsibility. Because when we skip that question, we unintentionally agree to this pattern. We normalize damage first and then call healing the solution. Let me pause here. Healing addresses what already happened. Formation addresses what never should have happened. Those are not interchangeable. And if we only talk about healing, we quietly accept that harm is inevitable. That is the gap this conversation is meant to expose. This is not about blame, it's not about anything other than responsibility. Because legacy is not forged in crisis. Legacy is formed quietly, daily, long before anyone realizes something is wrong. Much of Christian culture has drifted into a reactive posture. We respond when something breaks. We intervene when pain becomes undeniable. We mobilize when the consequences are finally visible. But Scripture never framed leadership that way. Biblical leadership, especially for men, has always been formative. Presence, protection, formation. Let me say this slowly. Reactive leadership asks, what do we do now that something went wrong? Formative leadership asks, what must be in place so this never becomes normal? Those questions produce very different outcomes. Girls do not wake up one day confused about their worth. That conclusion is learned, absorbed, modeled, normalized. What she experiences repeatedly becomes familiar. What becomes familiar becomes acceptable. And what becomes acceptable quietly becomes her standard. Let me say that again. What becomes acceptable becomes her standard. When protection is absent, emotionally, relationally, spiritually, culture does not hesitate. It is too happy to step in and assign value. And before she ever dates, she already knows what love feels like. Before she ever hears words from a man, she already understands what silence communicates. Before she ever needs healing, she already knows what she is allowed to expect. This learning is not theoretical. It happens through what behavior is corrected, what behavior is excused, who steps in, who stays quiet, who notices, and who looks away. Girls are always forming conclusions about safety, about authority, about worth, about love. And those conclusions are shaped most powerfully by the men who were present or absent in her life. Not by one conversation, not by one moment, but by patterns. And what a girl learns to tolerate in childhood becomes what she struggles to name in adulthood. That is why prevention matters more than repair, because once patterns are formed, healing is no longer just about pain. It is about undoing what was normalized. When formation is neglected, healing becomes expensive, not just emotionally, but relationally, spiritually, generationally. And this cost often shows up later as confusion around boundaries, difficulty trusting authority, spiritual disorientation, chronic self-doubt, repeated attraction to unsafe dynamics. Women carry wounds that shape how they choose patterns, how they parent, how they interpret God, and how they see themselves. Children then grow up inside of environments shaped by unresolved pain, learning the same patterns without words. This is not condemnation. Please hear me that this is clarity. Healing is holy work, but prevention is wisdom. This is why Raising Her Worth exists. Not to shame men, not to attack fathers, but to restore clarity around responsibility before damage occurs. This message is not anti-men, it is pro-men stepping fully into their calling. Fathers were never meant to be passive. Leaders were never meant to be silent. Protection was never optional. Raising Her Worth is not about fixing women. It's about forming foundations. So healing is not the first language a woman ever has to learn. If you are a father, mentor, or leader, and you want language, structure, and guidance for leading with protection instead of hesitation, I invite you to explore Raising Her Worth. The link is below, because protection is not something to apologize for, it is something to reclaim. If this message resonates, share it with another man who carries responsibility, and subscribe for the rest of this January series on formation, protection, and legacy. Ladies, if you are listening and you love a father, mentor, grandfather, leader, please share this with them and bring this series to those who can create the change we so desperately need for future generations and all the women and children around the world. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I know this topic isn't easy, but we all need to begin to create the change we desire. God bless you today.